World War I. The German Fifth Army was advancing on the defenses of the fortified region of Verdun, a small northeastern city of France. The French are holding down a bunker to prevent a German advance. This has been one of the longest and bloodiest battles in modern history. Loss of lives has been staggering on both fronts. Both sides desperately needed a breakthrough to win the battle. The French believe they may have found a solution. April 13, 1916. French Command Center gave the order to open up some old Roman tunnels beneath the bunker, hoping that this will allow them to launch a surprise attack on the Germans. The French eventually broke through the tunnels via the storage area of the bunker. They found it structurally stable and found urns and some Latin texts inside. However, strange things began to happen. A few days later, after the tunnels was opened, a soldier named Johannes wrote about strange noises emanating from deep within the bunker. One night, after having been awoken by it, he decides to investigate. While standing in the tunnel entrance, he saw a soldier named Tucson coming out of it. Tucson claimed to have seen something, but what that is not mentioned in the letter. More of Tucson later. Meanwhile, according to Neuer, the soldier has been studying the Latin texts found in the bunker. Whoever wrote these texts believes that they have found a means to immortality, and to achieve this goal, they needed access to some other world, one dominated by darkness. This dark world is said to be alive with cries of torment and the sickly rattle of souls near death. This was accordingly the original purpose of the tunnels, to be a doorway to hell. The note ends by speaking of some substance which grants to the worthy immortality in darkness. Johannes' notes were corroborated by first-hand accounts of a soldier who has entered the tunnels named Larue. But even stranger than Larue's accounts is the fact that he accurately described the contents of the text mentioned in Neuer's journal, even though Neuer never told a soul about them. According to Larue, he noticed strange glowing liquid seeping from the walls. When he turned around, the walls of the tunnel suddenly disappeared, and he saw himself standing in a vast plain of darkness. In the distance, there was a faint light that seemed to call him forward. Between him and the light, malformed shadows moved. He blinked and he was back in the tunnels again. Afraid that these accounts might scare the men from entering the tunnels, therefore foiling their plan of using it against the Germans, Neuer and Larue were punished and locked up by an officer named Renard. Neuer was eventually released. Upon returning to his bunk, all the men from his quarters now had experienced hearing and dreaming things, but they decided not to speak, fearing of being punished like Larue and Neuer. Some nights later, on the 25th of May, a couple of days after returning from a scheduled raid, Neuer wrote that they were all awakened by a strange sound emanating from the tunnel. The sounds of howling grew louder and louder each night. Desperate to find answers and a way to stop whatever they were going through, Neuer decided to enter the tunnel. Sometime later, Neuer was pulled out of the tunnel. He had been screaming for hours before the men found him. Furthermore, all of the engineers are now speaking up, claiming to have seen things as well down there in the tunnel. These men, enraged by how Larue and Neuer were treated for simply speaking the truth, staged a mutiny. They blew up the tunnel to seal whatever is inside, but by doing so, they accidentally trapped Tucson. An investigation into the sabotage was launched. Days after the investigation, 5 officers confessed to having conspired in the sabotage. They were eventually court-martialed for having destroyed any hopes of using the tunnels for their tactical advantage. Tucson, the one trapped in the tunnel during the sabotage, was presumed dead as a result of the blast. Sometime later, on July 14, 1916, Renard was found dead. His body has been badly mutilated. An investigation was launched, but proved fruitless. The man believed that this was not done by any human due to how badly mutilated the remains were. His death caused another panic, especially since it happened while the tunnel was still sealed shut as caused by the saboteurs. Tensions still grew within the bunker. They still heard voices, and it gets worse each and every night. One night, while the soldiers were in the mess hall, the beast came out of nowhere. Barber, one of the soldiers, having had enough of this dire situation, grabs his revolver and fires at the beast. His effort proved fruitless. Bullets only temporarily stunned the beast, and when it recovered, it eventually came after him and drags him into the darkness. Commanding Officer Fournier then ordered the men to hunt and kill the beast. After their efforts proved futile due to the fact that the beast is invulnerable to bullets, Fournier cowers in fear, becoming utterly useless. He keeps repeating that he wants to flee and blow up the exit behind him and seal the beast inside. The officers agreed with Fournier's will to flee. Fair enough, considering what they have been through. However, the plan involved the most despicable and selfish act of all. The officers proceeded to seal off the portions of the bunker, including the arsenal room. The officers then fled the bunker and blasted the only exit behind them, leaving behind the men trapped with a beast inside. Our main protagonist, Henri Clermont, a French soldier, is running away from German gunfire. He jumps into a trench where he was safe, at least for a while. He was eventually pinned down by German gunfire and was trapped in the trench with gas grenades going off all around him. Henri was facing certain doom from gas poisoning. Suddenly, out of the thick smoke emerges another French soldier clad in a gas mask, Augustin Lambert, Henri's best friend. Augustin hands Henri a gas mask and then he leads him back to safety. Sometime later, we see Henri running in the dead of night in a dark open field. He was looking for Augustin, who had not come back from a patrol mission a couple of nights back. He spots a flare and eventually found his best friend at the bottom of a huge ditch, alive, but on the brink of certain death. Wasting no time, Henri filled up his water canteen from a puddle nearby and gave Augustin a drink. As Henri was carrying Augustin back to the station, they were spotted by German soldiers and fired upon. A grenade explodes nearby, knocking both men off their feet. The last thing Henri saw before losing consciousness was Augustin, who appears to have died. Before we continue, I think it's important to put some context as to why Henri risked his own life looking for Augustin. Henri risking his life for his friend is not as simple as a fairy tale love story between best friends. I'm not going to say that it's something diabolical or sinister, because that would be just too melodramatic. It's more like of a prank gone wrong. You see, Henri and Augustin were suspected to be among the conspirators in the tunnel sabotage. As a result, an officer named Joubert ordered either one of them to go on what they thought was a simple routine patrol mission. Henri invites Augustin to a game of chance to determine which of them will go, to which Augustin obliged. But Henri rigs the game, ensuring his victory. Henri of course laughs at it at first, playing it off as a payback for his best friend's many pranks against him on the past. But when Augustin failed to return, he begins to worry. As time went on, his conscience kept eating away at him, until one night he couldn't bear the guilt anymore. Well, after that, we already know what comes next. Henri wakes up to a dark and eerily quiet bunker infirmary. In an adjacent room, he finds a doctor's note explaining how Henri is suffering from amnesia, with the recommendation for a transfer to a hospital if his condition didn't improve. Nearby, he finds a squeezy flashlight. This is a kind of flashlight powered by a pull cord, which was a standard military issue during World War I. As Henri steps out of the infirmary, he finds the bunker abandoned and in total disarray. He also finds strange scratch marks and holes resembling a burrow on the walls. He eventually finds a trail of fresh blood leading to a pantry. Inside, he finds a soldier propped against a box. He appears seriously injured, but he can speak. He explains how the officers abandoned the tunnels and sealed up the only exit, trapping them inside with a beast, and that he is the only one left alive. He further stated that the only way to get out is to blow open the exit once again. He explained that he can use the dynamites in the arsenal, and the plunger to the detonator is found in the excavation site. Finally, the soldier hands Henri a revolver, asking to be euthanized, finally ending his suffering. He exclaims there are bullets in the nearby pantry. Henri went to get the bullets, but as he returns, a large hand with sharp claws dragged the injured soldier into the darkness. Having a new lead, Henri went to the armory entrance. Unfortunately, it was locked down, along with some areas of the bunker. Henri tried turning a nearby valve that opens the lockdown areas, but the handle breaks. Henri then checks the adjacent mission locker room via an air vent. There he found a spare wheel locked inside a locker owned by a soldier named Delisle. Henri checks the officer's quarters, where he eventually found Delisle's corpse, and with it, his name tag with a code to the locker inscribed at the back. Henri then opens the locker, grabs the new handle, and with it, he was able to turn the valve, opening up the armory as well as the other lockdown areas of the bunker. Henri hurriedly proceeded to the bunker to get the dynamite and the plunger for the detonator. The good news is that the arsenal storage, which houses the dynamites, and the entrance to the tunnels containing the plunger are adjacent to each other. The bad news, both are inaccessible. The arsenal storage door requires a code to open. The tunnel entrance, on the other hand, is chained shut and requires a tool to cut open. In addition to such dilemma, the beast can be heard growling and lurking within the tunnel walls. As it turns out, the beast does not like bright areas. To navigate around the bunker, it dug a tunnel within the bunker walls. This explains the holes in the bunker. Fortunately, the bunker generator is operational and is enough to power the lights inside. Eventually, Henri finds a note left by one of the officers. It instructed anyone who finds it to go to the communication room inside the soldiers' quarters, where the code for the arsenal storage will be sent via a radio transmission. Henri does as instructed. Unfortunately, the door is locked. Luckily, Henri found the key in one of the bunk beds in an adjacent room. Henri then proceeds to the communication room and gets the arsenal door code over the radio.
I hope that you can hear me. I hope that you can forgive me. The arsenal code is...
Using the code, Henri unlocks the steel door and navigates through the dark maze-like chaos of the arsenal storage, all the while trying to stay as stealthy as possible to avoid becoming the beast's next meal. He eventually gets to the dynamite. One down, one detonator handle to go. Henri goes to the prison area. In one of the cells, he found a prisoner of war, known only as prisoner number 73014. But more importantly, sitting on a chair beside the soldier is a pair of chain cutters, just what he needed. However, the cell door is locked, and the control room which unlocks it can only be accessed via a steel grate. This can be opened using a wrench. Henri recalls seeing a wrench in the locker room where he got the wheel handle from Delisle's locker. Problem is, it's locked inside an adjacent locker belonging to a foreman named Stafford. Throughout his entire ordeal, Henri kept thinking of his best friend Augustin, whom he still hasn't seen. Eventually, he found a patrol report dated July 10, 1916. It talks about how Augustin Lambert, thought dead, returned to the barracks apparently in good health. He was even strong enough to carry another soldier. This, of course, was our main protagonist, Henri. Henri also found Augustin's family photos and some journal entries. His best friend spoke of how Henri saved him and how he gave him a drink from a nearby source which helped replenish him, enough to save his life. Augustin also mentioned his son and how he misses him and that he bought a stuffed rabbit for him. Unfortunately, he lost it and suspects it fell from his backpack. Though Henri found it strange for Augustin to have strength to carry him back to the bunker, considering that he was on the brink of death when he found him, and not to mention they were almost blasted to bits by the Germans, he was nonetheless just relieved and happy to know that his friend might still be alive. So, he pressed on with his mission. Henri proceeds to search for the code to Stafford's locker to retrieve the wrench. He went to the maintenance area. There, inside a chapel, he found a key to the pillbox. In the pillbox, he found Stafford's lifeless body, and beside it is his dog tag, with the locker code written at the back. Wasting no time, Henri retrieves the wrench from Stafford's locker and headed back to the prison area to retrieve the bolt cutters. He uses the wrench to open up the side vent of the control room. As he opens up the cell blocks, he had his first close encounter with the beast. Without warning, it emerged from the darkness and entered the German prisoner's cell and kills him almost instantly. When the smoke clears, Henri enters the cell and retrieves the bolt cutter. Henri proceeds to the tunnel entrance. Using the bolt cutter, he cuts the chain latched to the iron rails. Although the tunnel entrance was flooded, he was able to power up the pump and drain the water out. Inside the tunnel, he found a workbench with a pair of eyes gouged out by what looked like a hand-cranked drill. Beside it is Tucson's journal. It recounts Tucson's slow descent into madness. Instead of feeling horror and dread at the thought of being trapped alone in the seemingly haunted tunnel, Tucson felt right at home. He gouged out his eyes to see better in the pitch-black darkness. He says Neuer, Farber, and all of the others don't have the right eyes. Now that he has gone blind, his eyes are now the right pair to see the secrets and seductions of the dark world. Henri proceeds to go deeper into the tunnels, where he sees otherworldly rock-like minerals. He soon hears a voice creepily chanting what sounds like a nursery rhyme. Not soon after, Henri comes face to face with an aggressive shotgun-wielding man. Henri kills him. It was Tucson, easily identifiable by a bloodied bandage wrapped around his eyes, or at least where they used to be. Henri finds the detonator plunger in one of the rooms. As he was about to make his way back to the bunker, he spots something, a hole in the wall, covered by debris. Henri removes the obstacle and slowly crawls inside. On the other side, he sees the bottom of an open pit, the same pit or ditch where he found Augustin on the brink of death a few nights back. It turns out that the pit is connected to the tunnels. He checks the area and finds his best friend's dog tag, and with it, his locker code. He also finds the stuffed rabbit Augustin bought for his boy. Henri hurries back to the bunker. He can't wait to blast his way to freedom. But first, he has to make a detour. He goes to Augustin's locker. In there, he found more of Augustin's journal entries. What he read shook him to the core.
Up again, in the chapel, trying to pray, but my mind is too alive with thoughts of the cradle, the rabbit, and that water, its taste, and yet I don't feel tired. Instead I feel this itch, this sense that there are things I must do, purpose. Blood on my hands, blood on my hands, blood on my hands. Their pain. I want more of it.
Augustin transformed into the monster lurking in the barracks. The water Henri gave Augustin was fetched by him from a nearby source within the crater, which, as Henri discovered earlier, was actually connected to the tunnels. This was the same liquid described by LaRue as having seeped from within the tunnel walls. It then made its way to the crater, fetched by Henri to be given to Augustin. His hope of seeing his friend alive and well dashed out in an instant. Henri had no choice but to press on. He carefully armed the dynamite and attached the plunger to the detonator. Boom! The blast knocks him to the ground. He proceeds to the exit, but the blast didn't open up the exit. Instead, it opened up a hole to what looks like a tunnel shaft below. Having no choice, Henri jumps in. The tunnel led to an open cavernous area, faintly lit by a beam of light from above. Inside was a peculiar structure with interconnecting bridges. Henri eventually comes face to face with what was once his best friend. Henri remembers the stuffed bunny and distracts the beast with it. It worked. Henri blows up the platform the beast was standing on. The beast falls to the dark foggy abyss below. Henri sees the light seeping through and heads to it. Henri removes the debris and slips through the crack. He falls down a pit. He found himself surrounded by corpses of mutilated and decomposing soldiers. German soldiers can be heard rushing towards him. Then everything went dark.